to the House Judiciary Committee this Tuesday afternoon, February 10th, and we're starting our joyful ride through the budget components. I was going to say slog, but that would have been inappropriate since we have our appropriations person here. So we're going to start with Trevor explaining, Representative Squirrel, kind of explaining what is expected of us and what in particular we should look at, or whatever else you want to share with us from the jokes would be fine.
Trevor, I'm just wondering if appropriations get together off the record and do role play, just go, no. No.
Maybe part of the session starts.
Yeah, exactly.
You good?
Yes, over to you.
Representative Trevor Squirrel from House Appropriations. I was asked to come and speak to, I guess, the budget, because you have scheduled various components of the criminal justice system this week. I didn't come prepared to tell you what it is you're supposed to be doing in this committee in terms of giving us information.
Okay.
You already have that from our chair, I believe. So I thought I might just speak to, do a little recap on the budget adjustment, which is in Senate right now. I'm not expecting much in the way of changes, but you never know. And then talk a little bit about the issue of reversions and carry forward, so you understand that a little bit.
Great.
And then talk about some of the highlights of the budget presentations that we've had, or some of my thoughts about, I think, some of the issues, which may not be some of the same issues that you have, but I welcome any questions as I'm speaking. I do have a hard stop. I have a meeting I have to be at 1:30, so hopefully that'll be enough time. So anyway, speaking with the, just as a review on the budget adjustment, which, as I said, was in Senate approach right now. There wasn't a lot there. Just you had some about $500,000 for security services, and that issue will carry over into my conversation about the FY27. And then we had some miscellaneous costs related mostly to transport deputies and the state's attorneys. Again, these were items that were in the GovRec. It's not something we added to that. Okay, we just said, fine, we think that's appropriate. And also, you're familiar with the Chittenden County pilot project docket that just finished last Friday, I understand. And there was an appropriation, one-time appropriations made for judiciary and state's attorneys to help cover their costs related to that. One thing that's out of the purview of this committee, but question I had, and I haven't gotten a response yet, was, well, what kinds of wraparound services we provided? And this might be the kind of question you might ask when they're in here. You're doing a joint hearing, I believe, tomorrow.
Yes. Yeah.
About that. And, but they are getting the information together for me, and also what the cost was related to that, because there was no ask in the GovRec budget adjustment to cover or backfill what I think were costs related to providing those services. Think about the Howard Centers and organizations like that that probably provide those services. The other thing in the budget adjustment was the big increase in the health services contract for Royal Baffert DOC. There's been a huge increase in the census in correctional facilities, both the men's facilities and also the women's facilities. My last report on the women's facility is that we're over capacity, and we're pretty much there with most of the men's facilities right now. In budget adjustment, that done an increase of about almost $3.5 million as an amendment to the contract. You also see an increase in the VA in the budget for FY27 related to the same issue. And because of the census in the correctional facilities, we've had a big uptick in out-of-state placements too, with about 30 individuals, and that's to the tune of about $300,000 or $400,000 the BAA. That's probably going to double in the budget.
So I know that some of the census is due to federal, the feds using some of our spaces. Does the income from that offset these additional costs that we're paying for sending people out of state.
I don't know the details of the contracts, but they renegotiated and negotiated higher prices to be more cover call. That's not the reason for our problem in the.
No, I just wondered though, if that money does get applied.
My sense is that it does, yes. And I don't know if you know this, but the superintendents in the DOC system have the right of refusal, given the fact that we're at this place right now. So if the feds come to them and say we need to place somebody, and you don't have room for them, or we need to keep available space, they can say no.
Got one other question.
Yes.
When we repeal the repeal to allow the facilities to take in public inebriates, at that time, the corrections commissioner had said space wasn't an issue, but I'm now wondering if that is contributing to census issues and the cost.
I don't know the answer to that question. Need to ask DOC about that. I don't know what the numbers are related to that issue. What I wanted to speak to is just briefly about reversions and carry forward, just so you understand what's happening and what happens in this particular area, and understand it. At the end of the fiscal year in June, every department agency has to go through a closeout of their budget, and money falls to the bottom. Okay, and it's across various areas and what have you. And they have to account for that. They have to speak to Department of Finance and Management. And a couple of things can happen. They can be allowed to carry that money forward, and it can be used in two different ways. One, to help offset the Pay Act, payroll side of things. The other thing is that they can continue to use it. For instance, the court diversion program had almost $200,000 carried forward the court diversion program. But that's because they hadn't received and processed all the invoices at point 25. So that's a straightforward answer to my question. If finance and management feels that they don't need that money, or there's another reason why, they might just revert the money back to the general fund. And as you know, in January of this year, we got downgrades in our forecast, revenue forecasts. They were minor, small, but they still were downgrades. And so we had to adjust for FY26 and also for FY27. And a lot of that came from carry forward in that column, where finance and management went back in and said, well, we're going to take that carry forward and move it to reversion for the general fund to balance the downgrades in both 26, and they did the same thing in 27. So you're aware of that. When I'm looking at things that are in your purview, I just spoke to court diversion, state's attorneys. They had almost $800,000 worth of carry forward. And so that's the kind of question you might speak to that. I want to speak to them about. They haven't been in our committee yet. I've only spoken to them briefly about their budget, so I don't know the answer to that question. Anyway, and then there's some information here around victims' compensation and things like that. But anyway, nothing that's really significant in the area of carry forward. It's something that we do look at in our committee, try to determine the kinds of things we do in terms of the budget.
Yes, a question.
Yeah.
So if I'm following that, so there's the carry forward. So who makes a decision if it stays going forward or if it gets reverted back into the general fund?
Each department agency knows what their carry forward is,
Yeah.
what that number at the bottom line, and they break it out and they make their own recommendation to finance and management.
Okay.
Say, we don't need this, which is unusual.
I know, and then does that happen?
But we do want to X,
Yeah.
and there may be some latitude when they can move it somewhere else. But generally has to be for the same general idea, because when we appropriate money, we appropriate for a specific reason.
Yeah.
Can't move it too far. But finance and management come back and say, we agree 100%, agree 80%, going to take some of it, do that. So that's how the process works.
And then do you ultimately in appropriations see that carry forward and regardless of what finance and management say, you can say, we're pulling that?
We generally won't touch the carry forward, but we have, if you remember a few years back, there was a reversion of 600,000, I believe, in the DOC correctional services line. And I think I don't know if your chair remembers the conversation. We decided to pull that money and use that for the Turning Point Recovery Program that at that time was being self-funded by Turning Point Recovery Services in, I think it was Marble Valley. So at that time, we wanted to have DOC fund that program directly and also expand that. So we actually grabbed that money and reappropriated it for something.
That wasn't
We
necessarily
don't do
their
that
decision.
often. We
Yeah.
don't do that often, but we have the authority to do that.
Sorry, one other question with it. Is it a flag when you see that a line item has a significant carry forward and they're also asking for new money in their budget? Okay, this is how.
That's why it was only about 3 or 4 years ago that we realized the report was actually there. We could actually look at it in detail. It's been very useful.
Thank you.
So some of these agencies and departments have a lot of money that they carry forward. As far as the 27 budget, I'll just walk through the different areas and just highlight a few things. The Attorney General's Office court diversion. As we all know, the pre-charge program is new, getting off the ground. They have their budget is now 1.2 million in FY27, which is what it was in the FY26 budget. Well, planning for it. And it's in effect now in FY26. The only thing that's changing about that, and I know you guys are very familiar with the program, is that they're still keeping the 4 programs funded in Chittenden County in FY26, but they're changing that for FY27. There's 2 counties, I believe, that are not being currently funded. And I don't know the details of that, but I know they're working to probably create capacity, be my guess, moving forward. But the idea is going into FY27 that they will fully fund all the programs. So, and as you know, they hired an assistant court diversion person who's in charge of the pre-charge program. I haven't met her, but
Yeah, she's been in here. She's hit the ground running from what we understand. So I have a real basic question.
Yeah.
So I have the fiscal year 2027 governor's recommended budget. Where do I find that about the pre-charge? Where would I look in this document to find?
document you have.
It's the one that has sections A, B, E, etc.
You'd really have to drill down to find it. Where you can, if you really want to do some research on anything on the budget, okay, go to the Joint Fiscal Office website. And there'll be a drop-down menu on the left side, and drop it down, you see appropriations and budgets. Then you pick the 27 budget. And you'll look for the governor's budget book. Okay? That's all the information you would ever want to know about the budget. Okay? And then it breaks out folders, and it breaks out, you can go down and look at the detail. I could not tell you exactly where you need to go. I need to actually look at it.
Right.
Where it is.
Right. Okay.
A lot of the information we've typically gotten from agencies and departments, and you probably get the same information, is what they call the ups and downs, in other words, changes to the budget. And we don't find that very useful. So that's why we're asking departments and agencies to do a deeper dive into the budget and not just tell us what the ups and the downs are. We want to know what's going on within the programs themselves. So,
Right.
Is there a specific question regarding that?
Well, no, it's just, well, I mean, my question kind of comes from the email that I did get.
Thank you.
From the chair of appropriations and highlighted some sections to look at. And I looked through here, and some of them, frankly, I don't think have anything to do with this committee, like the $500,000 for new radio equipment for state police. That's not really us. And just want to make sure I'm not missing something. But I guess that's why we have people from all these different stakeholders coming in to talk to us. And so we can get,
I don't think I ever asked them the question, but if you want to do the research I just mentioned, that's the way to go really dig deep. But that's pages and pages of budget information.
yeah, no, I'll press the individuals to
Yeah.
show me where it is when they come in. So,
Also, they've got the other thing there, they're cutting over their new case management system, the AG's office. That was a $2 million project that they started, and they've got an ask in this new budget for operational costs going forward. Because once they cut it over, which I think is in the next 3 or 4 months, that'll start to hit it. So those are the two key things. There's a lot of these budgets, fairly level funding from last year to this year. It's a real change, different in the last 3 or 4 years with all the federal money that's been flowing through the system. So, although the governor, of course, gave budget instructions to the departments and agencies for 3% increase, we all know that healthcare costs and other things like that are certainly north of that. Most departments have been coming in at 4, 5, 6, 7, even 8% over last year's budget. It depends on the budget. Judiciary. Just so you're aware of it, they had 26 limited service positions that were given them a few years ago. And they're asking to make them permanent classified. So they're going to make this ask in this committee also. I've spoken to finance and management about that. They're ongoing positions being funded. They're not slated to change or go away. A lot of times when limited service positions are added to budgets, there's an end date to them. Typically, they're attached to federal funding. That's a fairly typical way to do that. This is a little different. It was more of a response to what we're seeing in the criminal justice system overall, such as the backlog, and it's not going away anytime soon. So they'll be talking to you about that. And again, we'll be looking for recommendations from this committee about how we pursue a number of these different items. Another thing that, as I mentioned before, Judiciary and the BAA had a big increase in their costs and their additional monies needed for court security, sheriffs, deputies. And they've been paying about $57 an hour for security services across the board. And they've been put in a position where they're pretty much going to have to go to about $75 an hour because across state government is sort of a going rate. Judiciary's had a lower rate. You know probably something about this. And that's putting a lot of pressure on the system. It's not in the governor's recommend, but it does amount to about $2 million a year, which is a big number. So your committee and ours will have to think about that and where we go with that. See what else. And then they're asking for some trainers and some things like that because of turnover issues. But finding new positions in this year's budget is, I think, somewhat challenging. Leave it at that. Any questions about any of this?
Yeah, can I just follow up on that? Because I feel like some of our testimony that we've already heard is folks asking for new positions. And that's my kind of thought too, is like, that's not going to work out really well. Like we would need to have a very solid argument of why, if that came out as a priority for us.
Yeah. And you'll see asks from the state's attorneys here too for positions. So that's going to be challenging this year. I know that in my conversations with finance and management, I mean, there's the position pool where there's open positions in the pool. Finance and management has been somewhat amenable to going into the pool, create new positions, but not create wholly new positions. Get a lot of shame, but they'll get a lot of
Holding?
What's that?
You say holding the positions?
Yeah, sometimes what happens if a position, my understanding, that if an agency or department has a position, it doesn't get filled and just sits there, and they can pull it back out of the department agency, but it still exists as a position. and it just drops into the pool as a one position. So, rather than expand the number of positions in state government, they would rather have you go into the pool. Doesn't change the numbers, the dollars.
So can you enlighten us at all about, because we've only had testimony so far from one group, but in terms of the vacancy savings that people are being asked to
Yeah.
take on, especially if they don't have vacant positions.
Yeah, and you'll get a lot of the agencies, departments come in and say, well, we can't do that kind of thing, right? It's too much. And then that could be true at a point in time, right? So, and that's exactly what finance and management does. They do a point in time. They look at the system and say, state's attorneys, you have 4 vacant positions on October 1, 2025.
School census.
So they figure out what that is, and that's your vacancy. Now, it could be that 2 months later, you filled that full 4 position. So if it ends up in your budget, you're in a bind. You may have to cut positions to meet the vacancy savings. And or we have to make a decision to fund that difference.
And what about the agency that it's the opposite? They didn't have vacancy savings on October 1st. So they got the full boatload, but now they come in and they had 6 people leave. Like, do you shift it?
Oh, they wouldn't come to us and tell us that.
Right out of them. In terms of the other question that I'm wondering, again, we've only heard from one group this year, but I know that people are given their allotment for what they're paying for overhead and what they're paying for sort of the administrative charges. And my recollection from past years is that those are based on 2 things, like a square footage formula for part of it and
Fee for space.
then an FTE, how many FTEs for like another part, like the HR allocation, et cetera. No. Because
Well, you're talking about a number of different things, right? I mean, those charges can be fee for space, okay, which is the real estate, it's
right,
BGS.
Yeah.
It could be digital services.
right.
In the department, to do that. And we've been working with them to Agency of Digital Services. They've been sort of trying to backbill a year later. So we're trying to get them on the current billing cycle. So it actually doubled up this last year. There also are embedded folks in departments and agencies. And that could be an IT person. It could be an AG person. Because when you've got a big agency like Agency of Human Services, sometimes they have attorneys that work in there to help them with that work. And so those kinds of things get billed across departments and agencies.
And somebody in appropriations is looking at how those allocations are being made. Like, that's not part of what you're asking us to do. Because again, like our first witness was saying, and everybody says that when they come in, they're like, well, we don't have any control over this. This is the charge that we're given. The part that we have control over is this. But at times there are people that have questioned like how much it's gone up or why it's gone up, and they're not told anything about it.
I would say if it's not policy related, you leave it with us. That's
Great.
what we give you. Okay.
Can I go back to one, I'm still stuck on your point that, although the governor asked for no more than 3% increase over FY 26. Most departments are coming in between 4% and 8% over. How should we think about this, the asks, I guess, in a slightly higher level, like what's average or normal? Governor sets an unrealistic goal and his own departments can't meet it. What gets funded? How should we think about it in what we recommend?
I'm not gonna have a good answer for that, because each agency is gonna be different. They may have different initiatives going on, right? circumstances they need to address.
So that you,
But yes, the administration is not being realistic out of the gate.
right, so
given
like,
what
do
we
we
all
just go,
know.
well, everyone's gonna come in somewhere around 5 over or something, like, do you?
Yeah, I don't know that you need to get into that piece of it. I would focus on the programming
Okay,
and things like that. Talk to them if you see vacancy savings. I would ask questions about what's behind that? What's the story behind those positions and things like that. So,
thanks.
state's attorneys, let me talk a little bit about the accountability docket. Some history folks just walked in. We just finished that up, and as I mentioned to you, you might want to try to figure out what's happening with the wraparound services around that. But we have on the face of it, it feels like it's been successful in terms of reducing backlog. I think one of the questions that you could be asking, I see Judiciary is in here, is, and these are numbers that we can see, right? We can say this number of dockets, this is what happened with all those cases. I'd be very curious a year out where we are with those same individuals in terms of looking at least one aspect of the effectiveness of the work we just did. And we need to determine, because I don't know the answer to this question, who's collecting that data and who's going to be able to report back on that data so we can have a sense of what's going on. And it's not clear to me, at least the conversations I've had to this point, that that's been addressed. Yeah. The Judiciary could address that. Yeah. So the other question too is, I don't know if I mentioned this, but in the budget adjustment, when the administration was making an adjustment to the downgrades, they ended up actually having some money left over after they moved stuff and reverted, which they weren't anticipating. And so part of that, they took $500,000 and dropped it in, asked us to put it into budget adjustment, which we did, $500,000 for accountability courts to expand something like accountability dockets statewide for those areas that want to do that. So I think there's a question about whether there's appropriate use of that money, whether there's different ways to use that money. So I just leave it there at this point in time, since there are a number of questions across our criminal justice system. Okay. I'm not saying it's not something we should do, but something we should talk about. One of the things you'll get from state's attorneys is rather than come back and say we need more assistant state's attorneys, prosecutors, they're going to make a pitch to add administrative support staff with the idea that that would help stabilize so that they don't ask for attorneys as a less expensive way to address situations we have around backlogs and what have you. I'm just going to jump along here. Defender General's office, no real changes there. One of the things you might want to think about in this committee is asking about his training, money for training within this area. Apparently, last year we put one-time money in or something like that, which I think was a mistake. We wanted to address that. It's not a big number. It's something maybe you keep on your radar when he's in there. We talked about DOC, out-of-state bed increase. That's another 800,000. We have another $5.3 million increase up because of the health services contract. It is what it is, unfortunately. And issue about pretrial supervision, and maybe you'll get more into that. I think there's some concerns about utilization around that. There's another 200,000 added to the FY27 budget, which is added to the base, which brings them up to about 1.2 million. goes from 5 positions to 7 positions. But it seems like what I'm hearing, that it's not really being utilized a lot. I think it seems to make sense, the program. But maybe this committee can dig a little deeper into that. And
That would be
we can either increase utilization of it, otherwise, do we need all those folks and money to spend?
Can I just, you mentioned the $800,000 savings in the budget adjustment, or I didn't quite catch what you were referring to, and I don't know which department it was either.
Savings?
It was just, or not savings, I don't know what the right, it was carry forward.
For state's attorney.
Oh, the state's attorneys.
Yeah, what was, you said we should ask about that. I
Yeah,
just,
you would ask about that.
it was an $800,000.
It was a little under 800,000 and finance and management and also state's attorneys must have made a decision to split it between paying down pay act and using it, and use it, but I didn't get into it with them.
All right, well, we know where to find you if we have further.
I can come back and fill in some more. You guys can always catch me in the hall.
So, all right, I appreciate it. Thank you. It's a good, good start for us to
Okay.
consider where the money is, where it's going over. So we will ask Judge Zoney and Terry Carsones to join us, for. Sure.
And Judge, you got that language?
I do.
Thank you.
This other team.
I'm good.
Like to just start.
I'm good right here.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Terry Corson, State Court Administrator. And I did submit, we submitted a memoranda and slides, and I have copies of it. That would be helpful if people would like paper copies.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Use those slides too. And I'm sorry, would have come a little bit sooner if I'd known Representative Sproul was going to be talking about different budget components. I didn't know if did he cover anything regarding the judiciary?
Just a little bit.
Just.
Security.
Oh, security, okay, having to do maybe with the increase in the sheriff's rates?
Yeah.
Okay,
And then a couple, yeah. I talked about the 3B deficit a couple times.
okay. All right, and we're happy to address that. I thought for purposes of this committee, I would focus in on those aspects of our proposed judiciary budget for FY 27 that has to do with kind of operations and programs in the courts. Otherwise, I wanted to just explain in terms of our proposed budget vis-a-vis the governor's recommend. They're actually very similar. I heard the figure 3%, which is the goal, but the governor's recommend actually included a 4.2% increase over our fiscal year 26 budget. And our proposed budget represented a 5.6% increase. So it was a little over $1 million apart in terms of the governor's recommend versus our budget. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that. In the beginning, we very much appreciate the governor's support of the judiciary, and just wanted to mention that at the beginning. And then what I thought I would do is go through what are several new costs in our budget. The total price for it is a little over $600,000. It's a modest amount, but I just wanted to explain why they would be critical to us and why we've included it in our budget request. And on the memo, it's just on the second page. But I guess to backtrack a little bit, our budget request is $82,954,799, and our fiscal year 26 appropriation was $78,499,456. So again, it's about a 5% increase over last year's appropriation. The new costs that we're seeking, the first one has to do with adding a help desk analyst to we now have 2 help desk analysts that field about 12,000 help desk requests per year, coming not just from judiciary staff, but also judges, for example, court users, pro se litigants. It's the whole gamut. We have one number, and you can also email, but we feel it's very important to have a live person manning the help desk. especially in terms of when you might have a court going on and some kind of glitch happen. We want to be able to have immediate access so that there can be an immediate resolution. And the reason why we're asking for an additional help desk analyst, looking at kind of what the recommended standards are and the practices, each help desk analyst is typically responsible for 2,000 calls a year. We have two handling 6,000 or 12,000 calls a year. Looking at the numbers and looking at how the calls that come in are then sent out to different areas that help with them. The numbers of a minimum of one additional help desk analyst would just be basically needed for us to keep somewhat abreast of the calls that come in. Again, to us, it's very important that somebody be able to get immediate resolution, especially if it's a court operation that's involved. So that's the first request that we're making, is that there be an additional help desk analyst to basically handle the volume of calls based on industry standards and even coming in less than industry standards.
Those coming from lawyers mainly,
It can come from court staff, it can come from judges. It's basically one IT help desk for anybody using the courts. It could be pro se litigants, could be attorneys, whoever is having challenges regarding. And then as the calls come in, they may get routed out then. If, for example, if it's an e-filing question, it can be routed out there. But if it's strictly tech, using something to do with the remote hearings, anything to do with tech at the courts, it varies considerably. But they're the immediate triage when somebody needs help. It's basically an IT help desk that we have everywhere on the website, on the notices of hearings. So it's the go-to number for that kind of help. Then we're requesting, in terms of training, we do an annual survey, and a focus of the survey responses is always the desire for training, sufficient training. We've had a very high amount of turnover, which I don't think is unusual in the workforce today, close to 30%. And how training is provided to judicial assistants in particular, and judicial assistants are what used to be called docket clerks, the people basically at the courthouses, physically in the courtrooms or at the counters or manning the phones. The training is provided by other people locally in that courthouse, whether it's the court operations manager or somebody else who's versed in the docket. So when the training is provided, it means that that person who's providing the training is taking time away from their normal work. We all have the emphasis and the desire to help with the backlog. And we feel like we've made good progress and steady progress. But when we have kind of so much time needed to be dedicated to training, it takes away from doing the normal work. And one solution that we thought would be helpful to address is to have a statewide training position for one for the criminal division. That's where we have the highest number of JAs. One for the family division, one for combined civil and probate divisions. Usually the civil and probate divisions are in one courthouse. And looking at the numbers of staff, it kind of equates out to half the number of those. And one for juvenile and mental health, which is a very unique docket. You have a lot of similarities among criminal, civil, probate, et cetera, but juvenile and mental health are very specific, especially because of all the guidelines that have to be met and the timelines. Our thought that with a statewide position, for example, in the criminal docket, whenever there's a new criminal judicial assistant that's on anywhere in the state, this person could be their basic trainer, whether remotely or in person, depending upon the location, the circumstances, to make sure to provide them with the best practices, with standard, correct, efficient training. It doesn't then take away from the local person who would otherwise having to be providing that training. And because of our remote teaching capacities now, they could train however many, remotely, come on at a time. The other advantage to having somebody kind of dedicated to that docket would be we have manuals for each of the dockets also that are continually in need of updating, whether there's new rules, new statutes, best practices, changes in the e-filing and the case management processes. They would also be tasked with updating the manuals to make sure that the manuals in each of those dockets are up to date. Right now, we kind of do that whoever can when they get a chance. The last way that we feel that they could be utilized is whenever there's a need for, if there's a court that's short-staffed, whether because of attrition, somebody's leaving, the position's been posted, but it hasn't been filled yet, or if somebody's on a medical leave or an extended leave of some other time, these positions could also be used to fill in or needed. So we feel that there'd be no wasting of time at all for this kind of position. And we just feel it would be so helpful to right now address a reality where with so much training that's needed and people being taken away from their regular positions to do the training, that this would address that situation.
I just have a quick question on this one particularly. Are the processes by county in each of the different courts similar enough that you could have a statewide person trained?
Yes, and that's actually one big advantage when we did the restructuring in the unified courts. There were variations from county to county. Today, it's supposed to be consistent. That's why we have, for example, right, well, that's why we have the standard practices committee. So that if an attorney sees that, hey, it's being done differently here than here, they notify the standard practices committee. We look at it and then make sure if there's discrepancies or variations that at least that's how it's supposed to work. That reminds me, I did inquire. Marcia Shells, who's the director of Technology Services Center. She's also annoyed by the screen we have to pick up everything that has a car. She checked with Tyler Technologies. Apparently that's something that's done nationwide. But we're getting the new public portal, the research public portal. And she's inquired whether or not we can't change that. And they're looking into that to see if we can't.
Amazing.
And she said, you're not the only one that has raised that as something that really would be helpful.
Yeah, great.
So,
Well, I
yeah,
appreciate you looking into it. Thank you.
Marcia is on it.
So would these individuals also help on putting together or coordinating the judge trainings? Or is it just for other personnel or for the clerks?
It'd be for the court personnel. If there's a new judge that comes on, Judge Zone has actually organized a very robust onboarding. Is it 1 month or 2 months?
I'm thinking more on the ongoing training that's provided to judges.
Oh, ongoing training. Well, there's
We have regularly planned trainings throughout the year. Judicial College, we have other training days that we set aside. We have judicial summits and summits with stakeholders, youth summit, things like.
But these individuals here would not be involved in that. Okay. And would they help with training of the gals as well?
GALs?
Yeah, the GALs.
Yeah.
Gals.
Yeah, okay.
Gals.
Okay.
I'm
Sound right.
tired.
Okay. Oh,
I can barely read straight right now.
That's what you like to hear the chair say. Oh, we're looking at your budget? That's right.
Oh, yeah. Numbers, you know. I apologize. I love your numbers.
the gardens.
Close attention here.
Where are you at?
The GALs.
The GALs have actually a very
Guardians ad litem.
Guardians ad litem.
Finally. I apologize. Go ahead.
No, the guardians ad litem, actually, there's a very specific training protocol for the guardians ad litem from the minute when they apply, and I think it's 4 times a year that they have like concentrated guardian ad litem training. We actually have 20 new guardians ad litem who went through the last round of training. And then actually, there's different components of that, but these would be
Not for that
certainly,
meeting, okay.
I think, court operations. I mean, it could well be that they could assist with that. But usually the guardians ad litem have training regarding what's unique to their positions versus training in the kind of court operations and case management, e-filing, depending upon, like in criminal. I mean, their training has to do, there's very specific codes, there's very specific processes for the criminal, normal case progression. So it would be geared to what's specific to that docket.
Right.
And I kind of envision if these positions come about, that the people that would apply for them would be experienced people in that docket. Maybe somebody who has several more years until retirement. It's kind of a way to really take advantage of the expertise that they've gained over their careers and make sure that the new people coming on are getting kind of the best training possible. That's how I kind of envision it if the positions are realized.
So which of the dockets are the most complicated for bringing new clerks up to speed and new staff up to speed?
I would say criminal, especially in the courtroom, because you have such rapid fire happenings between arraignments. The days when you have, however many dozens of clients, we want to make sure the conditions are done. I think criminal courtroom operation, but I would also say juvenile in terms of the complexity of the docket and all of the different moving parts that you have to keep constant control of.
Do you have more turnover in one or more of those dockets than others?
I would say criminal, we've had the most turnover, and it is very demanding, especially in the courtroom. And also keeping in mind, for example, you're in a criminal, child sexual assault trial. The same thing in the juvenile docket. There's a lot of, I guess, trauma associated with the work that's done. So I think that makes it also more demanding for the docket. So that's for the request behind those positions. And then the next request isn't for a position, but rather for monies for a contract. This has to do with the Mental Health and the Courts Commission. And this is work actually Representative Lalonde you're very familiar with. Has to do with the Mental Health and the Courts Project Director, whose position has been grant funded to date. But similar to other grants that have not been, the solicitations have not come out for them, the monies ends in September. And the type of grant is a state crisis intervention program grant, a SCIP grant. And it may well be that it comes out, but it hasn't yet. And we don't want to lose the momentum that we have with this position, who's been very involved with all the sequential intercept model workshops that have taken place, with the statewide summits, with all the work, especially including the work with the accountability court, if you will, which involves providers coming to the courthouses. So the project director has been very involved in facilitating that. I think if you have questions about the accountability court, Judge Zoni is going to talk about how it's being kind of implemented in other counties, but it always will involve that critical component of connecting providers at the courthouses. And this is part of the work that he does. So we're asking for the money as a contract, not as a position, to cover it. And if we get the grant, we will apply for it and assume we will get it, but it just hasn't come out. So we wanted to make sure that, again, we don't lose the momentum that's been so successful with the Mental Health and the Courts Commission and the summits and all the work that's being done now, especially as we move the accountability courts, if you will, to the different counties.
Jeremy, good question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Continue to look through this. I'm curious if how these pieces are listed, are they in order of your prioritization at all? Ultimately, what we're going to be doing is making recommendations of things. So I think it'd be helpful to know, we're not saying yes to everything. Like, what is your order of things? And is that how they're listed in here, or?
We didn't list them that way.
Okay. Should you provide a priority?
Well, probably with that, the priority would be the last one, which actually has no money request attached with it, just because of it. And it has to do with, in fiscal year 24, we were appropriated 26 positions. And it came out of the funding came out of the general fund, which would normally be permanent positions. But the way it was termed in the statute, we called them limited service positions. And when we inquired, we were told this was kind of at the end of that session. And it came out, kind of quickly. And we were all so thrilled, to get the positions. Then we inquired about limited service positions, and we were told, well, consider them kind of extended limited service, because the limited service positions for the pandemic era ones were like 2 to 3 years. And they said, no, consider these more than that, like 4 to 5 years. And then you'll need to come back before that period of time ends to have them converted to permanent positions. And last year, the state's attorneys and sheriffs, which in the same exact statute, received 9 positions same way, funded in the general fund. It's part of our base funding, but they were called limited service. Last year, the state's attorneys and sheriffs came and requested that they be converted to permanent, and they were. So it was suggested to come this year to ask for the same treatment. So when you ask what has priority, to me, that would be because we have 10 judicial assistants, a database administrator, our two help desk analysts whom I was talking about, they're part of that category, and then 11 security officers, which have become even more important now that we're losing more and more share of personnel or the ability to provide courthouse security through the sheriff's department. So those would be the most critical. Again, there's no dollar figure, there's no cost because they're already part of our PACE funding. But that would be absolutely essential because if we lost, these people, and after when they have now 2 years left, people start looking when they figure, this is not, it's temporary.
So these positions are in the current budget proposal.
Yes,
But you're looking for the language to make them permanent positions, so you don't have to revisit this.
Yes.
next year.
right.
Okay.
But
So that
the
is
answer to
tough.
your question, yeah.
Yeah, but then what are the other, I just feel like this is gonna be a really hard budget
Really
year,
tough year.
and so
Yeah,
knowing what people's priorities are is gonna help us to
Right.
do it too.
right. Well, I think, it's hard, I feel like I'm, King Solomon or something. I need a baby. But if it comes to that, I would say, perhaps instead of the 4 judicial assistants, spread those among the help desk. I really do think the help desk, because we don't want to be in a position where people are having to wait or they get a busy signal or there's no answer to the help desk, because we take pride on providing very prompt customer service. We're not able to. We're struggling with the 2, with an additional one. We feel that would put us on good footing unless the numbers increase from 12,000 to, whatever. But they've been kind of level at the 12,000. So that's why we fill this position. And then again, it's hard to say not knowing about the grant situation, but we would hate to lose this momentum that is going. So I guess if you were to ask me, I would say, well, maybe instead of 4, do 2 and then spread it out that way. If you're looking to say, how can we cut it?
I just feel like those are the situations that we're gonna be dealing
Sure.
with.
Yeah,
And so I appreciate getting the kind of full array, but the reality is it's probably going to be, well, we can't do that. We can do a little bit of this. and-
right. Oh, I
Yeah.
appreciate very much the quandary that you all are in. You're getting all kinds of very legitimate, reasonable requests and trying to figure out how to best accommodate. Cannot be easy. The other, sorry.
So, I know these grants have been amazing, and there were other expenses too that the grant was covering, right?
Yes, right. For example, when we have the summit, it covers the travel expenses for people that are coming to the summit. In the admin, Linda Richard is the person who's been working as a temporary employee to do kind of the administrative support for that commission.
And I am more familiar with the drug treatment ones, having been involved a bazillion years ago with one of those grants.
Yeah,
And I feel like it also helped pay for providers of direct service to be there. And I don't know if that exists anymore or if that's getting lost because
oh, well, we have, the way the drug treatment courts are funded, and Greg Mosley is the chief of finance administration. He's on the call as well to make sure. But my understanding is we're good with those for the next 2 or 3
Right.
years, because we had applied for them before kind of the changing.
it's the mental health. So it doesn't pay for mental health providers to be,
The skip grant.
I guess I'm thinking of that.
Yeah, no. No, this was strictly, it was suggested, because nationwide, there's a recognition that there's so many mentally ill people that are court involved. Every state was basically directed to develop a commission to look at this. So the skip grant was recommended, and that's what we applied for.
And with the accountability court, I know the day that I sat in, there were a bunch of providers there, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
Was that providers came or were providers
Oh,
on contract or?
a lot of them came because of the some regional workshops that basically brought everybody together to make sure that nobody, that we're all kind of collaborating and not having redundant. And that's something that the project director organized and coordinated. Yeah, so I think that's how it, one of the positive results, to try to make sure that we're making it as efficient as possible. So we hope, and they have not said, no, it's not going to be renewed, but we just haven't had the solicitation. And with the money's, his funding running out in September, we thought, well, we'll just request the contract payment. And I don't know how it works in all honesty. If the skip grant comes out in the summer, we would apply for it and then I don't know if we can then just give back the money if we don't need it after all. But we would do that.
I'm sure they would, I
We
mean,
can find somewhere to spend it.
Well, or give it back or let you guys know, oh, it came through after all. The other part of it,
it's a big match.
what's that?
It says grants require a match, and that might be the money we need to get the federal grant.
Oh, if they do.
Yeah.
But I guess what we would do is just make sure joint
Yeah,
fiscal
sure,
knows whatever it is that comes about.
We all trust you.
And the last part has to do with, it's actually a pass-through, so it doesn't come to the judiciary, but if, it might have been Representative Squirrel alluded to it. The sheriffs are looking for an increase in their rate, in the rate that they're paid. We enter into a contract with them to provide courthouse security. And they're asking, quite an increase, but apparently the amount that they're requesting, $75 an hour, is what they get from the executive branch already. So they've been getting from us $57 an hour, and they're requesting the increase. There was included in the materials, and I'm sorry I didn't bring a copy for everybody here, but a memo that the sheriffs did. It's with your materials online. That spells out how they arrived at it. But in essence, that's what we get paid from the executive branch. We feel it's only fair to get paid. Otherwise, they're not able to, according to their calculations, meet their expenses. So we, on behalf of them, are requesting that as a pass-through. The monies would go to them if given.
Is that the, I was looking for that increase, the $1.9 million increase above
Yes,
what it currently is? Or
Yes.
Budget?
yes.
And are the Department of State's attorneys and sheriffs also advocating for that, or is this really just through, this is where we're going to hear about this one?
Well, I think because the judiciary apparently we're paying them $57 an hour. And so I think it's coming through this channel because otherwise they're satisfied, it sounds like, with the $75 an hour from the executive branch. And I don't honestly know if it's something separate from the legislative branch, if they do anything.
I don't believe that you're going to see Department of State attorneys and sheriffs coming in. I think they view it as our bill that we have to pay.
But is that in the budget, the governor's recommend, or is it the 1.9 billion in addition to what's in the
The
governor's?
governor did not include in his recommend the $75 an hour rate.
Okay.
The governor included the lesser rate.
So has this been already contracted for, or is this what they're seeking?
The contracts come into play July 1. So right now, the contracts that are in effect through July 1 are at the $57 per hour rate. And what happened last year, just so you're aware, when we put in further monies for it, we had put it in at $53 an hour, which was a slight increase over the previous year. But then when it came time to negotiate the contracts, they came in at $57 an hour, and we weren't able to get the service for less. So we had to go to the Budget Adjustment Act for that difference of $4 an hour.
And so they're asking for $75 an hour at this point.
Or to be able to utilize for the next round of contracts.
And those negotiations are between you folks and the sheriffs. I'm just trying to understand that. So if we decide, well, no, that's an awfully big raise, we want to give them $65. I mean, is that so? I mean, or is that something that we're in the position to do?
Well, Greg Mosley, and I don't know,
I think Greg is on.
yeah, is he able to respond? He's the one that negotiates with the sheriff, so he might be the, Greg, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So does it help your negotiation if we say we're not going to give any more than $65 an hour?
Yeah, because I can only bring that amount to the table to talk to them about. What will happen is some sheriffs might say that they could do that. But then other sheriffs might opt out of the contract. So what has happened this past year, Terry mentioned that we went up to $57 an hour, which required a budget adjustment request. And even given that increase from last year, we lost 5 deputies across about 3 different counties, usually precipitated by a retirement or a turnover of some kind, and the sheriff then reporting they can't recruit a new person to work court security. So we started in July with 40 deputies across our courthouses. We're down to about 35 at the moment. So even going up to 57 an hour has caused a decrease in that service.
Yeah, I guess I'm just, if appropriation says no, what's the upside? It sounds like you may or may not be able to cover your security needs with the sheriffs.
Yeah,
I mean, it's hard to say for definitively that you wouldn't, but sounds like that's kind of what's blowing in the wind, is that you won't.
Unless the governor loses.
I would presume that we would lose some number of deputies. I can't really predict how many. I do think some counties will sign the contract for that. Some will opt out. And what we've been doing is using staff security in replacement of deputies, which is it works in some cases, but we do want that armed law enforcement officer in the building somewhere. So if they have like 6 deputies in a big courthouse, we could deal with 3 deputies and 3 security, but we wouldn't want to go down to 0. So it's all kind of a negotiation, and we can try and deal with that and the recruitment issues that the sheriffs have been having.
What happens if you're unable to have the security there in particular court days?
So that has actually occurred up in Orleans County, the civil building that we had a contract with the Orleans Sheriff for 4 deputies. They're down to less than 1 deputy now because of turnover. And so what we've done is we've kept the civil building closed on most days, except when we need to use that courtroom, in which case we have staff go up from other areas and staff that building. So one of our courthouses is open only part-time.
Right. And so is it safe to say if you didn't get all those contracts that there'd be fewer court days?
There would be fewer court days. The smaller buildings would probably have locked doors on some number of days based on the court schedule and the security schedule.
And the other thing I think I'm hearing is that the contract with the executive branch, assuming with sheriffs or deputies, is 75. So there also maybe just a need for a statewide amount regardless of branch. Like that's the issue for me, that the service is the service. So I just, I don't understand why there would be a difference just because you're serving one branch over the other.
So that's their argument, that they were saying that we should have a statewide, a state rate. I don't know a lot about the work that they do for the executive branch. I can tell you a little bit about the work that you do for us, and that's within the courthouse itself, underneath one roof, one property. They might go around outside and patrol the parking lots or sidewalks, but there's no vehicle necessary. So there's certainly no vehicle costs associated with our service, where I think what they do with the executive branch is a lot of transports, mental health transports. And I don't know a lot more. Some of it may be event related, where they just need an officer for 3 hours at night for an event. For us, it's full-time work, Monday to Friday.
And I feel like it creates competition within the system, because why wouldn't sheriffs want to sign up for the $75 an hour contract versus the lower one? So
we've had that situation, and in fact, some of the road contracts, the construction work is even higher than $75 an hour. And during the summer months, it's even harder to get deputies.
So there are other sheriff deputy contracts besides the executive contract and judiciary contracts.
Yeah, they usually have contracts with local towns, high schools, doing sporting events, whatever.
But with state agencies.
I think they have one primary contract with the executive branch for all of the executive branch work. There's the transports, which are actually state employees, so that's a little bit different. And then there's the court contract with the judiciary.
Okay, so there's not any other rate out there for any other work that sheriffs are doing for the state?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And are they state employees?
Oh, they're sheriff.
They're sheriff employees, so they are transport deputies. They're county employees.
Yeah, the transport deputies are
state employees.
But otherwise it's county.
County.
It's funny.
Okay. Thank you.
So I don't know if you know this, or we'll need to ask the Department of State Attorneys and Sheriffs, but does the $75 go directly to each individual, or is like 15% overhead that's going to the sheriff's department and et cetera, et cetera?
So that's the contracted rate that we pay the sheriff's department, and how much they pay their deputies is really up to them. So that includes the hourly rate for the deputy plus whatever overhead they might have.
Okay. That's interesting.
Would it be possible for us to kind of get a sense for what the executive branch contract is?
So, yeah. Well, I'm not sure who we'd reach out to. Well, yeah, no, I can think of. Okay, no, go ahead, Greg.
I was just going to suggest, I work with Bill McSallis from BGS, and he works with the sheriffs. He might either manage that contract or know who does.
Okay, all right, I appreciate that. So people in here are going to give me a hard time for my memory, but I don't remember if I had you introduce yourself and say what your role title was.
Sorry, Terry did mention me at the very top, but I didn't do it when I came on. My name's Greg Mosley. I'm the Chief of Finance and Administration for the Vermont Judiciary.
So everybody should applaud my memory that I didn't remember that I forgot to do that. All right, so any more questions? Yeah, go ahead. Going back to
Not on sheriff deputies, but and this may be getting more granular than we're supposed to get. I don't know. So we're looking kind of to Karen's point, like trying to figure out where we have movable pieces with all of these different budget requests. Like, would 2 judicial assistants dedicated to training, 1 for criminal, civil, and probate, and 1 for family, juvenile, and mental health be like something that could be workable? Or is this like kind of like, no, that's like too much work, like that's not going to be effective? We really need all 4 or not at all.
Well, I guess that would in part depend upon something that would be difficult to predict, and that is how much turnover there would be. We made these requests on the basis of the turnover for the last 3 years, basically.
Yeah.
But I mean, from my perspective, however many positions, even if it's 1, it was like, would be great compared to now when we really, but it's in the criminal docket, especially just because that's where we've had the most turnover.
Yeah.
That would be helpful to have. I don't know, in all honesty, I'm just trying to picture a rare individual who would be, have the kind of thorough background that I envisioned for this position in all these dockets. So that would be one thing as well, because we'd want to have the person training to be thoroughly familiar with best practices. And they are different dockets and different, codes, different processes, different case flow. So, I mean, we would be grateful for whatever we could get, and we would then figure out, okay, what would be the best use of this position? And maybe it would be to be able to combine more than one, civil probate. The civil and probate docket, I mean, I don't know if you probably do mostly criminal.
Yeah.
There's many more similarities in that than versus criminal, than even versus family, but we would figure it out to utilize whatever we would be, very grateful to get and figure it out, the best use of it.
Great, thank you.
And one more.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Only because we were educated by Trevor with this. So did you have any carry forward this budget cycle? And if so, where was it designated?
Greg would know that.
Hey, so at the end of the year, we actually did not have carry forward. We had some projects that were at or over budget, and so we ended up using all of our carry forward at the end of this past year. In previous years, we have had some carry forward, usually ranging between like 0.5% and 1% or 2%, somewhere in there of our total budget.
Right, I thought, didn't we have to use the carry forward for the increase in health insurance? I thought that was where.
That was part of it, yes. That and the remote hearing replacement project. We were covering the costs of putting in new equipment for the remote hearings.
We have to transition from WebEx to Zoom for remote hearings because WebEx is no longer supporting its platform. So that was why we had an increase in the IT budget beyond what was anticipated. But yeah, so carry forward, we've used it for whatever kind of comes up that wasn't expected in last year, the increase in health insurance that wasn't covered. That's what we use that for. Thanks.
A couple additional questions. So the mental health and courts project director, we're definitely going to want to know a little bit more. It doesn't have to be now, it could be tomorrow, perhaps during the discussion of the 3B docket pilot, of how that position helped there, and going forward, what you anticipate how that person would be helping in that. So that's just a plant a seed for tomorrow.
Okay.
But as far as the $88,000, is that the kind of thing, that sounds like that's one-time money, until
Right.
it's also kind of contingent on whether you get the grant. Is that the kind of thing that come next December, you could be seeking in the BAA, or no?
Oh, what's that?
You'd run out of money.
Well, if they have carryover to cover it, I mean, but, yeah, they have.
Well, we really,
I just wonder.
our hope anyway, is that there would be a skip grant solicitation. And then we would, maybe you know more than we do.
No, I don't.
At least the people some grants, they've said, no, we're discontinuing, we're not going to. They haven't said that for that. But you're right, we're going to have to, at some point, determine whether or not there is alternate funding or not. And if not, then perhaps then seek a position. But we figured if there is grant funding, that would be preferable to you all, just because then it would be.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they'll figure that out down soon. My last question is, what all did you do to deeply look into what cuts you can come and propose to us? And are there any cuts because I know that's, at least when I talk to any of the appropriations people, they say, if they're coming with any new initiatives, ask them what they are looking to cut. Or the savings.
Right, yeah. Well, I guess on the slides, just so you know, and Greg could speak to this better than me. The judicial budget, it shows the breakdown of what it is. 72% of our budget is salaries and fringe. And I honestly, really, we're usually struggling to keep our heads above water. We have been very grateful for the additional positions that have been given us, which enables us to really operate without, feeling like we're jumping off a ledge. But it's not as if anybody can say, oh yeah, I've got tons of free time, or I'm all caught up. It's not that kind of a situation to be able to say, oh, we can cut some positions here and be able to meet our obligations and try to address the backlog and maintain, a reasonable level of court operations. I mean, I would imagine you see it in the courts. Everybody is really working as hard as they can to keep everything, afloat. I mean, between judges, court staff, personnel, we have, for example, if there's a attrition, we always look at that position to say, okay, should this continue here, or could this be used to help where help is desperately needed here? When we do that analysis, but Greg would be familiar too, we kind of have every position accounted for. And I personally I'm not familiar with a position to say, oh, that's extra, or that's kind of a cushion. But I also understand the predicament you're under. And I mean, we will continually try to see if there is ways. The whole thing about, electronic filing or electronic case management, that'll free things up. It just has not worked out. And whatever, even if you were to say, oh, it's made some things easier, okay, you don't have to box up the paper files anymore. It takes longer, I forget, I think it was Senator McCormick said as a teacher, it took him after the automation, 45 minutes to do what it used to take him 15 minutes to do in the paper world. So we haven't seen that there's a savings in time. And in terms of positions, we've needed more IT people to be able to handle that, all the new technology that now we're completely reliant on. We're relying on the e-filing, we're relying on remote hearings, and it's good things, but it just hasn't resulted in time savings or personnel savings.
I appreciate that. I just want to have the question there. It's actually the $500,000 for the accountability court. That's in the BAA though, right? And that's
Yes.
now in the Senate. And I understand you all don't need that for that purpose. What's the status of what's going on with the discussions on that?
On that, well, I'll let Judge Zoney respond. I was gonna say, the monies for the pilot docket in Chittenden, that came to the judiciary were for the retired judge. Or they set up a separate courtroom. And so it was the courtroom operator and the security for that separate courtroom. The other counties are not in a position to have a separate courtroom or to man a separate courtroom. I'll let you be able to.
So to the extent that the monies were, that the debt was accrued, if you will, by the judiciary, my understanding is we will be getting reimbursed for the monies that we spent on the 3B project. Additional monies would be still available because what we're looking to do is try to roll out the project throughout the state. Each county, as we all know, is different and has unique challenges and unique benefits to being in those counties. And so what we're going to be doing, we visited with all the judges. We had a meeting last week with stakeholders to determine how are we going to look at this going forward, and okay, what will work, let's say in Rutland County or Washington County or some other counties. The monies that would be available would be monies that would be used to pay for what we saw worked, and that was having additional transports, be able to bring people to court, having the availability of resources, whether it's from AHS or other resources who are there to be able to do what was referred to, you'll hear about this tomorrow, the warm handoff. Also having the ability to make sure that if we need to backfill judge positions, maybe bring in a retired judge, and that would be an extra cost at different times. And so the one thing that people have asked is, well, have you decided who gets what? And the short answer is no, because we don't know what it actually looks like as the final plan yet. But I'm confident that when we all sit down and say, okay, in this county, what do we need to make it work? And when we look at that we'll say, okay, here's how much it will cost. And each of us can come up with what the plan would be and how much the money would be.
So is that where that $500,000 is? It's in the BAA. There's not an impact on the request, this budget request for fiscal year 27?
For the judiciary?
Yeah.
No, because it would be extra monies that we currently would not be spending. We would not be spending money on extra transports. We would not be spending money on retired judges to backfill. If we have, for instance, let's use Rutland for an example. If we have Rutland and we're pulling one of the judges in Rutland County to handle a pilot docket for X amount of days per week, the question is, what docket are they coming from? And if they're coming from a docket, how do we make sure that docket is also maintained? So can I bring in a retired judge to work there? Can I bring a judge in from another county to work there? But what if we're also doing another pilot in another county? And so the ability to move pieces on the chessboard sometimes require us to get another piece and bring it in, which is the retired judge. So those types of monies would be necessary.
But I'm just saying, so where is that money? Is that in the BAA that's being considered in the Senate, or is this future money that you may have to come back next December to backfill? I'm just trying to make sure I understand.
My understanding was that it was in the governor's recommend for the 27.
Well, the 500,000, I think, is in the BAA. Didn't Representative Squirrel say that?
Yeah, no, that's what I understood.
There was also money, there
There's
was
also money in the
to
recommend.
be able to use that, I thought, yes.
And how much is that for fiscal year 27? You know, or where I can find it?
I made the mistake. I thought the 500 was also going to be coming up for 27, not just the BAA.
Well, if you could double check that,
No.
that would be great. Okay, other questions? Not at the moment, at least. Maybe we'll have more tomorrow when we get into it. All right, so we'll take a break. So Christopher, are you online? Is Christopher Burkell online? I don't know if I see him. Oh, okay. Christopher, are you with us? Oh, no, well, it's not Christopher. We have somebody else who's going to talk to us.
He is going to be signing on. I just signed on early, but.
Okay, all right. So we're running a little behind, so we'll probably be about 20 minutes from now.
July.
is when we'll get